Hey, FanboyNation.
This is your pal Daffy Duck, and you're watching.
You're watching.
We're watching. You're watching Fanboy.
Fanboy. Fanboy.
Fanboy.
Fanboy.
A fanboy, etc.
FanboyNation.
Dot. I assume Tom.
This film made its world premiere at the South by Southwest Film Festival in Texas, and now is having its final screening at the Palm Springs International Film Festival on Thursday, January 9th at 7:45 p.m. The only way I could describe this film is a sacrilegious version of It's a Wonderful Life. Natalie Bailey, how are you today?
That's a great. I love that comparison. I'm very well, thank you. I'm sitting in a beautiful place called Arrive in Palm Springs, where I'm about to leave Arrive.
Well,
But I will be there Thursday night for the screening. It's at the Richard Center or something. The Richard, I'm going to look it up properly. It's at the Richard Center for the Performing Arts in Palm Springs. And I will be there doing a Q&A. I will be back for that if anyone wants to turn up.
Well, that will be fantastic. The writer of the film is Lou Sands, who I presume hates her sister in writing Audrey.
And yes, sometimes sisters are difficult. We both have sisters. Yes, no, they've come to terms with each other, and I don't want to inflame her right now to be really, otherwise she'll get in trouble with her sister.
The film is interesting. There are sacrilege aspects of it. You know, biblical erotica turned into helping Christian couples, which I can definitely see some interesting evangelical sects doing something like this.
Probable, right? It's very possible.
With the way religion has gone in the West, yes. Audrey being a terrible human being, and the fact that life is better without her.
Yeah, life is better without her. And it's an interesting thing. What I love about it, when we were pitching it, and still, pitch the concept to people, you see people for a moment go, and then they laugh. They try process it, and they feel I can see the guilt as soon as they start laughing. Who has a great time after someone goes into a coma? This family.
Well, when the film was described in the very beginning as Jackie's character Ronnie taking her daughter's place and swapping identities with her coma victim daughter, you're like, wait a minute, how is this going to be a dark comedy? But then when you realize how removing this one piece of the entire puzzle makes everybody's life better, it's almost disheartening in the fact that maybe we should let her go to Nepal, and that's the big spoiler, because in the beginning of the film, she wants to go to Central Asia.
Yes, stop holding on. Well, it's an interesting thing about people. There's so many times, and I mean, people probably don't want to hear it, where they say, oh, my father's unwell. I'm really worried about my mother. If my dad passes, I'm worried what she'll. And historically, women usually thrive, sounds terrible, after the passing of their partner that they've been for a really long time. And because we can often just hold each other in a certain space that we might not have, it might not be our full selves in some way. So I think it's not meant to just be about people. It's not, Audrey doesn't just represent a person, it represents also the thing that holds us back. So sometimes you just release yourself from this thing you think you need or you must have, sometimes life gets better.
We all hate Josephine Blazer's character Audrey in this film. I wouldn't say there's anything redeemable about the character, so it almost makes you want to hate Josephine in real life, but I've never met her, so I can't say. But that's how great her performance is.
Yes, she's really lovely. And interestingly, when we did some castings, and then we did a chemistry test with Jackie, we all got off it was via video, sorry, not video, the internet, via Zoom, and we all got off and we talked, and we all said, oh, we're scared of her. Do we feel scared of her? We met about 4 different women. This Josephine we were frightened of, and so she was the one. But we don't fear her anymore.
You broke her spirit.
Our fear. We know what to do if we start revering her.
Yeah. Well, Hannah, how do I pronounce Hannah's last name properly? Is it Divini? Divini?
Diviny.
Divini. Thank you.
Diviny.
Hannah steals the film. Just her facial expressions, her one-liners, the desire to be a Paralympic fencer.
Yeah, she's fantastic. What a find. And it took us a long time to find her. Look, Lou has always nailed that character. She's nailed every character, but that's always been one of our favorites is Norah. And so to find someone who could serve that role well was really, really tricky. And for several reasons. It was always written for a person who had cerebral palsy. But they also had to be witty, and they also had to be able to play a teenager. That's a very difficult thing to find because, as we know, people with disability haven't often seen themselves reflected as actors and, on stage and in film and television. So they don't tend to go into that career. So she had literally just burst into the scene, and we were so lucky. We'd spent years like thinking who's going to play it, keeping our eye out, reaching out to different communities. And she'd just she'd done a short series for SBS in Australia called Latecomers, and that was her first time acting. And we'd seen an early release of it, and she just nailed it. And she's an activist in her own right. She's a writer. She's a really amazing person. She's gonna go.
I will say you did nail the shithead activist, pseudo-spiritual, fake warm-hearted characters of I'm being charitable only for my own edification.
Yes, yes. I love Max. I love Max. He says some great, great one-liners. And he is such a revolting person that it's so easy to get pulled into these sort of charming boys or women when we're, mostly boys from my experience, when we were teenagers. And then you think about what they're saying, you're like, that is so self-centered, just constantly self-centered. Yeah, I love those characters, and Lou's great at writing them. She just looks at these people who were it sounds so worthy.
Awful.
But
No, just say it. They're awful human beings.
They're awful human beings. He's after one thing.
Yeah.
A warm body.
Yeah.
That's it.
And doesn't matter who.
Doesn't matter who.
Yeah. I do have to ask, since you have a sister and Lou also has a sister, how much of your own interpersonal relationships and your own sibling rivalries went into Audrey and Norah? And how much did your sister, for you personally, and then Lou's sister, after seeing the film initially, go, I remember that argument when we were 15, how to end up in the film?
I think hilariously, my sister didn't recognize herself because she doesn't realize. Perhaps. Luckily, I've got two, so they won't work out which one I'm talking about. So yes, sometimes they don't recognize themselves. But I do think, I do remember, I can't speak for Lou, but actually she did say something the other day that her and her sister have become closer since watching the film. Because that you can recognize the traumatic, teenage years that you had together. It's a long time ago for us. But yeah, hopefully, we remember it. The terrorized remember it.
Oh, so you're the younger sibling.
I am the younger sibling, and I actually lose the older sibling, but still the youngest can still cause you a bit of, who knows? Doesn't matter where you are in the order of children. It doesn't mean the oldest has to be the nasty one, right?
Listen, sometimes the baby's the favorite and they get away with murder.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah. What has been the general reaction to the film? Because these aren't, the most upscale people of society character-wise, but somehow in certain instances they are relatable because it is the human condition.
Yes. So, there's an audience that are going to there's obviously a split audience for us. Some are absolutely love it and think it's the best thing. They feel seen. But so there are always going to be people who are shocked by it because Christian porn is not for everyone. I
Myself
think
included,
it's not for everyone.
Yeah,
Thank
I'm in
God.
the camp that
Thank
it's not for me.
God.
What's that?
I said, thank God
Yes.
it's not for everyone. So it's look, it goes to its extremes, but it has just been well received. I've sat in really, really wonderful audiences where we've had 500-seater cinemas in the UK and in Australia, in Melbourne. And it's so wonderful to hear the audience just laugh the whole way through and then get gripped into the end and gasps of shock. So it's been great. We've had some really great critical reviews. So we're really, really happy with how it's been responded to.
Speaking of the knowing someone biblically put on film, we'll use those terms to keep it consistent. When you're reading the script and you get to the scene of like, all right, we're going to make this type of film using biblical erotica, what first goes through your mind in like, I can't believe she put this in there, or oh my God, that's hilarious, versus wait a minute, how are we going to film this?
Yes, so very good question. And you know what? For a while, I was like, is this too far? Is this too far? Not that, it's not a moral thing for me, but I was, curious about it. But it has, it's such a book, as I said, I remember when I was at film school, someone actually pitching to me that we do this, that we film this sort of stuff. Not for me. I'm not going to be doing. Obviously I end up doing something, with it fictionally. But I remember a co-filmmaker at university saying, it'd be a really good market. So then when Lou put it in a script, I was like, nobody, we don't think, has done this yet. Or have they? We don't know. It's possibly out there. And you've got to get a lot of trust in the actors. That's one of the biggest things, okay? Because we have to film it. And it was interesting because I don't think some of the actors were quite realized, we'd take it as far as we did. But to me, it was really important that it was fairly accurately represented as to what this would be, that it would feel like it could be a real concept. I didn't want to have to cut around people too much, It's like, I just want to be able to show what's possible in this realm so that people could go, yeah, that's believable. This could happen.
Nothing surprises me these days, with society. What scene that, you said this could be too much, but what scene that you really enjoyed filming or really enjoyed in the script that just had to end up on the cutting room floor because it didn't fit this 95-minute narrative?
Yeah. There was I remember 3 scenes that we had to cut, and there might have been more because we were encouraged to get it down to a time that was good for cinemas, and because a lot of films are really long now, but actually as an independent filmmaker, and this is a tip for any independent filmmaker, it's better to do a shorter film because then cinemas are more likely to program you because you can fit into slots. If you're too long, you might not fit into a little slot that's available to you. Anyway, that's an aside. Something I learned along the way. There's a scene where so in the film, Lou discovered these things called trauma dances. And I don't know if you've ever seen them on the internet. Have you ever seen one?
Mm-mm.
Okay, so look them up. Very funny. For a while, there was this little thing going around. I don't know if people are still doing it, so maybe it was a couple of years ago, where people were filming themselves next to their child who was in a coma, dancing, not speaking, just dancing, but on the screen were words reflecting their trauma, or the song was evocative of the trauma they're going through. There was a woman standing next to her child who was was in a hospital. It was wrong, dark, weird. So you see that we have a trauma dance that it's the way that Audrey outs her mother behaving badly within the film later in it. But originally she was actually mocking her mother, Ronnie, who performs a trauma dance next to Audrey's bed when she's in a coma. And it was ridiculous and funny. It was wonderful because it's not what you expect from any human on earth.
And I thought interpretive dance was terrible.
That's right. It's literally like interpretive dance, but with a person in a coma next to you.
Ooh.
I know. So we were really sad to see that go. But some of the feedback from an early screening was that the audience wasn't it made you dislike Ronnie early on because they hadn't quite worked her out yet. Maybe if it was later in the piece, we would have got away with it because everyone understood, right, who is this person and enjoyed the selfishness and oddness of this character. But at that point in the film, it just didn't work.
This begs the question, what does a spin-off or sequel to Audrey look like where we say end up following Cormack, because Jeremy's character is quite interesting, or even going further and following Norah off to university?
Right. I know. They're all such strong characters. That's the beauty of Lou and her writing, is that she creates such fabulous characters that there's someone for everyone in this film. Love them or hate them. There's someone for everyone. As a father, you can relate. As a sister, you can relate. As a mother, you can relate. Well, hopefully not relate, but
let's hope not that far.
You could go, yeah, don't go that far, but
right.
So yeah, absolutely. There's a world where these characters can live in their own right and hold up their own film. Because I love like Jeremy playing Cormack. He's the saddest clown. He's wonderful, and then he turns into sexy clown. So he's transformative, and it's. I haven't seen all his work, but I feel like it's his best work thus far. He's brilliant.
Right. This does beg the question from audience responses in Australia and the UK, because Australia and the United States have a similar sense of humor. We're kindred spirits or siblings in the fact that, yes, we were both British colonies, except we were better than you guys in getting rid of them.
Yeah, we're still holding on.
Listen, I don't trust people with bad food. So England can stay over there. Their food's terrible. Although your Vegemite isn't that appealing either. But
we love Vegemite. That's
smelling salt. Someone passes out, you just open up a jar of Vegemite and that will wake them back up.
It's like socks in a jar.
Yeah. That's a nice way of putting it.
Smelly socks in a jar.
What has been the UK reaction versus the Australian reaction versus now the North American reaction?
All great, actually. It's very... I worked in England for a really long time, so I feel like I was there. I still work there. I was there last year working. So I know their sensibility really well. I worked with Armando Iannucci for, I don't know, I'm still work with him again, but, for close to 20 years, maybe 20 years. Makes me feel really old. So they really got it, and I understand them. So I knew how to land it there. And everywhere, like, they get the Neighbours jokes, which America won't get the Neighbours jokes as much. And for those of you who don't know Neighbours or Home and Away, essentially almost every actor that you think is your favorite actor who wins all the Golden Globes and that, they usually were on a really crappy little television show. I shouldn't say that. It was crappy.
Neighbours has been on for what, almost 50 years at this point?
Oh, it's been going for a very long, 40. And I shouldn't say it's crappy. It's been, a wonderful thing. That's mean of me. Our local, you're gonna have to edit that out.
No. I'm leaving that in because Neighbours was listen.
My friend writes on it. She'll be so upset.
No, Neighbours aired in the United States for a little while, and it was, by God, one of the worst, most intriguing shows ever made in the fact that you're like, one, how did these people get on TV? And then you see them 5 years later and like, from that scene to where you are now, how did you become an incredible actor? Like,
Incredible, right? It has
yeah.
born of, so that's why we cannot criticize it, because actually some of the best actors that are now in Hollywood came from Home and Away and from Neighbours. And
Right.
and there's something when I was living in England, there's something about watching it and you're just watching, you get homesick and you just turn on some Neighbours. It's really like a warm hug.
Right. But Neighbors was the point where like it was like you've never been on camera before. You've never read a script before. Here you go. And then 5 years later, they're amazing. And we're like, how did
How?
you pull that off so quickly?
I know, it's incredible. And I remember my father, I was an actor originally, and I remember my father saying to me, "Why didn't you go on Neighbours or something?" And I was offended. And now I'm like, what an idiot. What an idiot I am. Who's the fool here? Me.
And in 6 months, pay
I
attention.
could have
Natalie
been some
Bailey's names will be in the Neighbors credit as a director.
as a director, that's right. No, that'll never work again. I will never work again. They'll be like, you said we were crappy.
No, but that's their vengeance. Like you said, we were crappy, and here you are directing our series.
And they're not crappy. No, they look, it's, I haven't, I'll be honest with you, for me, it was something in the 80s and I loved it and watched it. But it's one of those things like Coronation Street and whatever, they're our bread and butter, and they go for so long that we rate them. But hey, what show goes for that long? You can't criticize that, huh? That's
Exactly. And then you can bring back like we had, what was it? Skippy, the kangaroo one.
Oh yeah, Skippy. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. I
See?
know Skippy now.
Yeah. Now you could do a Skippy one and make it like a horror movie, since all the like classic kid shows are becoming horror films.
Yes. Yeah, Skippy. Yeah, it's possible, right? I
And
saw
after Lou sees this, she's going to write that down. She's like, Skippy horror film. Okay.
could be horror. Someone will lose on it. She's like, she's tapping away right now.
How long did you build the relationship with Lou? Like, how long have you two been friends and coworkers? And then, finally understanding each other's shorthand.
I think we only met. I'm going to give me 2 seconds because my ride's here to get out of here. So I'm going to answer your question, but I'm just going to message him and say, with you in 5. Okay, so we met at a speed dating event, which sounds really exotic and exciting, but it wasn't. No, it was great. It was a speed dating event for writers and producers. So I was there in my producer side in that capacity when I worked for a company in Australia. And she pitched to me some television shows and Audrey. And I just loved it so much. And I loved her so much. Her and I feel like, for Lou and I, it feels like we've known each other forever. We were always going, we were destined to be friends at some point in our lives, and we have friends who cross over. So that, I think it was instant. We just got each other. You find those people and you think, oh, why didn't you come into my life 20 years ago? Because we could have had this beautiful long history, and now we've got only 30 years left or whatever. We could have had 50. So yeah, we just do understand each other and respect each other. And really, yeah, I hope to make many more Lou Sands film and television shows. She is, my little favorite.
Fantastic. Remind us, Thursday night, for the final screening at Palm Springs International Film Festival. And where can we find you on social media to talk about Audrey?
So I'm an NB director. That's the way to find me on Instagram. I don't tweet, or whatever it's called now, X. No. I can't say anything in such a short amount of words. So that's where I am. And yeah, as I said, I'll be there on Thursday night, and it's at the Palm Springs High School, that center. So it's a big auditorium. It'll be great. Look, it's also got a lot of queer content in it. So Palm Springs feels like the place for it.
Natalie Bailey, thank you so much for your time talking to me about Audrey. Final screening, Palm Springs International Film Festival, Thursday, January 9th at 7:45 p.m. Congratulations on the film.
Thank you. Thank you so much.